I'm sorry, but we can't just hand out cash to anyone who walks in, bank manager Jessica Keller said, her voice dripping with condescension as she pushed the black woman's withdrawal slit back. Across the counter, especially, not amounts like this. Those words echoed through the marble. Lobby of Meridian Financials. Flagship branch as a circle of staff had formed one. Young woman leaned over to her colleague, whispering just loud enough to be heard, "Yeah, right. She doesn't even look like she has that kind of money." Laughter rippled through the group as Angela, the undercover black CEO, stood there, dignity intact, but humiliation by the second. What these employees didn't know was about to change everything about their careers, their lives, and this bank forever when the woman they thought was not deserving to withdraw her own money revealed who she really was. Have you ever been judged before someone even knew your name or who you are? This story gives the most satisfying example of instant karma you'll see this year. And if you believe everyone should be treated fairly and respected no matter what their skin color is, comment respect. First in the comment section and hit the subscribe button now. This story began when an elegant black woman stood calmly at the counter, her posture straight, her expression composed despite being surrounded by bank staff whose faces ranged from dismissive to openly mocking. This was Angela Freeman, though none of the employees recognized her 25 years before that humiliating moment in the bank lobby. Angela Freeman stood behind a different counter wearing a pressed uniform and a name tag that read Teller Trainee. Her journey from that first position to the executive suite is nothing short of extraordinary. Angela didn't come from money or connections. What she had was determination, intelligence, and an unwavering work ethic that propelled her through the ranks of Meridian Financial. From teller to loan officer, from branch manager to regional director, Angela mastered every role she took on. Along the way, she earned her MBA from Harvard, LED record-breaking quarters in 3 different Division S, and developed a reputation as the problem solver who could turn around struggling branches. When she reached the C-suite as Chief Operations Officer 5 years ago, many thought she had hit the glass ceiling. They were wrong. 3 months ago, when Meridian's CEO announced his retirement, the board of directors found themselves at a crossroads. Despite Angela's impeccable credentials and 2 decades of loyal service, several board members expressed concerns about her readiness to lead in private meetings. These concerns seemed to focus less on her qualifications and more on whether major clients would be comfortable with her black skin as the face of the company. After a contentious vote, Angela Freeman became the first black woman to lead Meridian Financial. Her acceptance speech was gracious but pointed. "I will ensure that every client, every employee, and every community we serve experiences the same level of respect and excellence. No exceptions." These were empty words behind closed doors. Angela had been tracking a disturbing pattern of customer complaints, while overall satisfaction scores looked good. Digging deeper revealed significant disparities in service quality. Certain branches, certain demographics. The numbers told a troubling story that the previous leadership had buried. Rather than relying on reports and secondhand accounts, Angela decided to see for herself. The undercover boss approach wasn't just a gimmick, it was the only way to experience the unfiltered reality her customers faced. The flagship branch downtown was managed by Jessica Keller, a 15-year veteran with an impressive record on paper. Her numbers were exceptional: high transaction volumes, excellent new account generation. But Angela had noticed something in the raw data. While formal complaints were few, customer exit interviews told a different story. People were leaving, especially customers of color, citing poor service and feeling unwelcome when pressed. Most wouldn't elaborate, simply taking their business elsewhere. It was 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday when Angela Freeman walked through the revolving doors of Meridian Financial's flagship branch. She had deliberately chosen modest attire, a simple navy hoodie on dark slacks, and a face cap. Her natural hair was styled conservatively, and her makeup was understated. She carried a well-maintained but not designer purse. To anyone looking, she appeared to be a casual middle-class woman, not the CEO of the entire institution. Angela took a seat in the waiting area, ostensibly checking her phone, but actually observing the customer service dynamics unfolding around her. What she witnessed in those first 15 minutes was more revealing than 1,000 customer surveys. A white businessman in an expensive suit approached the entrance. Before he even reached the counter, a staff member intercepted him with a smile. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" The man was escorted directly to a desk, bypassing the light entirely. Minutes later, an elderly Asian couple entered. They were directed to take a number and wait. No smile, no warmth, just a pointing finger toward the seating area. A young white woman in Casual clothes approached the quick service counter. The teller chatted amicably with her, asking about her weekend plans, transaction completed in under 2 minutes, then a Hispanic man in janitor work clothes stepped up to the same counter. Suddenly, there were additional questions, requests for multiple forms of ID, and a suspicious once-over from the teller. His simple check catching took nearly 10 minutes. Angela watched this pattern repeat itself 6 more times before she finally approached the counter herself. By then, she had been waiting for 37 minutes despite the branch being only moderately busy. 3 white customers who arrived after her had already been served when Angela finally reached Teller Beth's window. The young woman's smile faltered. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the previous customer. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," Angela said, sliding her ID and withdrawal slip across the counter. The amount $115,000. Beth's eyes widened slightly. She examined Angela's driver's license, then looked at her face, then back at the license as if confirming they were indeed the same person. "This is a large amount," she said, her voice rising, just enough to catch the attention of her colleague at the next window. "Yes, it is," Angela replied calmly. "But it's within the daily limit for my account type." Beth didn't respond. Instead, she turned and whispered something to Mark, the senior teller at the next station. Mark glanced over, nodded, and then walked over, positioning himself directly behind Beth so he towered over the counter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly, not directed at Beth, directed at Angela. Heads turned throughout the lobby. Other customers stared. An older woman clutched her purse tighter. Angela felt the weight of every eye in the place, the silent judgment, the immediate assumption that she must be doing something wrong. With remarkable composure, Angela placed her bank card on the counter alongside her ID. "No problem at all. I'm simply making a withdrawal from my account." Mark picked up her ID, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. "We've been seeing some unusual activity on these types of accounts lately," he said, emphasizing these types, just enough to make his meaning clear. "We need to be extra careful. What types of accounts would those be exactly?" Angela asked, her voice steady. Mark ignored the question. "Beth, can you pull up the account history, please? Let's see what kind of transaction patterns we're looking at." As Beth tapped at her keyboard, another staff member drifted over. Richard, according to his name tag, leaned in and whispered something to Mark, not quite quietly enough, probably one of those money laundering or check cashing schemes. Richard didn't even try to hide his contempt as he looked Angela up and down, taking in her modest clothing and natural hair with a smirk. "We just need to verify the funds are actually yours," he said with false sweetness. "You understand, right? It's for your protection." This humiliation was calculated and deliberate, yet Angela maintained her dignity, standing straight, voice unwavering. "I understand the need for security. I've provided my identification and bank card. I'm a customer of this bank and have been for many years. I'd like to complete my transaction now, please." That's when Richard called over Jessica Keller, the branch manager. She stand across the lobby with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in her life. Her expression was a practiced blend of concern and authority as she approached Angela. "Ma'am, I understand there's some confusion about your withdrawal request," she said, her tone dripping with condescending. Mentioned she didn't introduce herself, didn't ask for her name, just immediately assumed a position of authority over her. "There's no confusion on my part," Angela replied. "I'm simply trying to access my own money." Jessica's smile didn't reach her. Eyes. 1500 is a significant amount of cash. May I ask what it's for?" This question, one that had not been asked of a single white customer making large transactions that morning, hung in the air between them. The double standard couldn't have been more blatant. If they'd put up a sign, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. As Jessica Keller stared down at Angela, her face a mask of practiced concern that couldn't quite hide the disdain underneath. The bustling bank lobby seemed to quiet around them, as if the very air was holding its breath in anticipation of what would come next. "Mrs. Freeman," she said finally, glancing at her ID, her fingers holding it by the edges, as if reluctant to touch it too much. "This amount doesn't seem appropriate for someone like you. This bank prides in dignity, and we have a class of customers we serve, so we can't serve you here, there." It was the mask had slipped in those few words. Jessica had revealed exactly what this was about. Not security protocols, not banking regulations, just pure, unfiltered prejudice dressed up in corporate speak. Angela felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same sensation she'd experienced countless times throughout her career. That moment when someone underestimates you, dismisses you, reduces your entire existence to a stereotype. Behind Jessica, the staff exchanged knowing glances. Beth looked down seemingly uncomfortable, her hands fidgeting with a stack of deposit slips that didn't need straightening. Her body language screamed discomfort, but her silence made her complicit all the same. Mark and Richard didn't bother hiding their amusement. Richard actually snickered, covering his mouth with his hand in a poor attempt to conceal his laughter. I'm curious, Richard chimed in, leaning against the counter with newfound confidence now that his boss was back him up. His voice carried, deliberately ensuring nearby customers could hear. Did you come into some money? Recently, a settlement perhaps, or maybe an inheritance, or maybe you laundered the money. The implication was crystal clear in their minds. There was simply no legitimate way a black woman could have access to this kind of money. It had to be some kind of windfall, some stroke of luck rather than hard work and determination. A white young mother with 2 children had paused her transaction at the next window, openly watching the scene unfolding. She pulled her children closer, whispering something in their ears, teaching them, perhaps unconsciously, to view Angela as someone suspicious, someone who didn't belong. Angela took a deep breath. Her composure was remarkable. Given the circumstances, not a hint of the rage she must have felt showed on her face. I'd like to speak with someone who can actually help me complete my transaction. Please, someone with the authority to override whatever concerns you seem to have. Every word was carefully chosen. Professional, reasonable, giving them no ammunition, no excuse to label her as angry or difficult. Jessica's smile tightened, a flash of anger crossing her features at being challenged. Ma'am, I am the highest authority in this branch. I'm the manager. There's no one else for you to speak with. She leaned in, slightly lowering her voice to a stage whisper that was still perfectly audible to everyone nearby. The scent of her expensive cologne, likely meant to convey success and authority, wafted across the counter. Perhaps you might be more comfortable at the check cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to handling your type of banking needs. You should get maybe $1,000 or two. There, the dismissal was so blatant, so disrespectful, that a collective intake of breath could be heard from customers who were shamelessly eavesdropping on the exchange behind the teller. Windows. The daily operations of the bank continued. The cash counting machines worried quietly in the background. The security cameras mounted in each corner of the ceiling recorded everything, every expression, every word, every microaggression playing out in high-definition detail. Angela glanced up at one of those cameras, a flicker of something, perhaps knowledge, crossing her face so briefly that no one noticed. Without another word to Jessica, Angela reached into her purse, a modest leather bag that had been a gift from her team when she was promoted to COO, and pulled out her phone. Excuse me for a moment, she said, stepping slightly away from the counter while still remaining in full view of everyone as she dialed. Richard nudged Mark, both of them watching with smirks on their faces. Richard whispered something that made Mark stifle a laugh. Beth, the teller, who had first assisted Angela, kept her eyes down, but her discomfort was palpable in the rigid set of her shoulders. Another customer, an older black man in a postal worker's uniform, watched the scene with a resigned expression that spoke volumes. This wasn't surprising to him. This was Tuesday, this was banking, while black, yes, hello. Angela spoke into the phone, her voice taking on an even more professional tone than before. This is Angela Freeman calling. Richard mimicked, her posture exaggeratedly standing up straight with his nose in the air, mouthing Angela. Freeman calling to Mark, who stifled a laugh. Richard's performance was for the benefit of the entire staff, a show of dominance, of belonging at Angela's expense. The bank's mission statement was prominently displayed on the wall behind them, building financial success together. With trust, respect, and integrity, the words now seemed like a cool joke in contrast to the scene unfolding beneath them. Jessica stepped forward, patience clearly exhausted her. Polished leather shoes squeaked slightly on the marble floor as she moved, the sound oddly loud in the tension-filled space. I'm going to have to ask you to conclude your business elsewhere. You're creating a disturbance in our branch. The lower banks out there will be able to serve you not. Here the irony was staggering. The only disturbance was the staff's treatment of a legitimate customer attempting to access her own funds, but in Jessica's mind, and in the minds of those who shared her biases, Angela's mere presence, her audacity to expect equal service, was itself the disturbance. Angela continued her call as if she hadn't spoken. Yes, I'm still at the downtown branch. No, they've refused the transaction. Yes, that's correct. Her calm was unsettling to Jessica. People in her position being denied service, being humiliated publicly, were supposed to react in one of two ways: explosive anger that would justify removal, or defeated acceptance that would end in retreat. Angela's composed resistance followed neither script, and it clearly unnerved her. Ma'am, Jessica's voice rose, the veneer of professionalism cracking. Further, if you don't leave the premises immediately, I'll be forced to call security. Angela turned slightly away from her, still speaking clearly into the phone. The bank's large wall clock ticked loudly, marking each second of the standoff. It was 10:17 a.m., a time that would be recorded in numerous termination documents in the hours to come. Jessica signaled to Mark, who reached for the security phone extension. The situation was escalating by the second other employees had stopped what they were doing to watch, sensing that something significant was unfolding. That's when Angela turned away from Jessica and spoke her final words into the phone, words that would change everything. In the next few moments, Diane, I need you in the downtown branch now. The name hit Jessica like a physical blow. Diane, as in Diane Porter, head of operations for the entire bank. Angela knew her. Angela had her direct number. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jessica's face, the first crack in her confident facade. Who was this woman, really? How did she have direct access to one of the most senior executives in the company? The question lingered in her mind for only a moment before her arrogance reasserted itself, probably just name-dropping. She thought a bluff. People like her always tried to intimidate with claims of knowing important people. Hit the subscribe and like button if you support Angela, the undercover boss in this story. In the headquarter branch, the executive suite of Meridian Financials suddenly burst into activity. Diane Porter stood bolt upright at her desk, her face draining of color as she recognized the voice on the other end of the line and realized who was calling her. Diane had worked alongside Angela. For over a decade, they had broken countless glass ceilings together, navigated the treacherous waters of corporate finance as women of color supported each other through personal and professional challenges. Get me every customer complaint from the downtown branch for the past year, she barked at her assistant. Every single one, even the ones that didn't make it into the formal review process. Assistant scattered as she grabbed her tablet and security badge. Her designer heels echoed sharply on the marble floor as she rushed toward the executive elevator, the one that could take her directly to the lobby without stopping in the adjacent conference room. Board members who had been reviewing quarterly projections found themselves suddenly interrupted as security feeds from the downtown branch were pulled up. On the main screen, "What's happening?" asked Jonathan Prescott, the chairman of the board, as technicians scrambled to enhance the audience. "You need to see this, sir," replied the head of security, his expression grim. The color drained from Prescott's face as he recognized the woman being mistreated by their staff. That's Angela Freeman," stammered another board member. "That's our CEO, yes," the security director confirmed. "And this has apparently been going on for 17 minutes already." On screen, they could see it all unfolding in real time. The board watched in stunned silence as their CEO was treated with contempt in her own bank record. Everything. Prescott ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Every second, every word. And get legal up here immediately." Back in the bank lobby, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Jessica began to realize that something was very, very wrong. The confidence drained from her face, replaced by the first flickers of uncertainty unknown to her and her staff. The security cameras had also captured their treatment of other customers throughout the morning, the pattern of discrimination that Angela had witnessed firsthand. Every interaction, every desperate treatment, every preferential service was now preserved as evidence. The same system designed to protect the bank from external threats was about to expose the threat that had been inside all along. Angela Freeman stood perfectly still. Phone now returned to her purse, watching as the realization slowly dawned on Jessica Keller's face that she might have just made the biggest mistake of her career on the 21st floor of Meridian Financial's headquarters. Chaos had erupted in the executive suite. The normally quiet observation room where security feeds from all branches were monitored had formed into a war room in a matter of minutes. "Pull up every angle we have," Diane Porter commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. The head of operations stood ramrod straight in her tailored navy suit, her usual composed demeanor replaced by an intensity that had her staff moving with unprecedented urgency. "I want audio. I want facial recognition. I want timestamps on everything." The security team scrambled to comply with her directives, fingers flying across keyboards as they pulled up multiple camera views of the downtown branch lobby, screens filled with different angles of the same humiliating scene. Angela Freeman, their CEO, being treated like a criminal in her own institution. "Camera 3 has the clearest audio," reported a young technician, his face pale as he realized the severity of what they were witnessing. "And we have continuous footage from the moment she entered the branch at 9:15 a.m. in the adjacent boardroom." 3 board members who had been in a quarterly planning meeting watched in stunned silence as the security feeds populated the wall-sized screens. They could see everything: the smirks, the eye rolls, the blatant disrespect the different treatment of customers based solely on appearance. The pattern was undeniable, Abel, and it was playing out in real time before their eyes. Yes, replied Jonathan Prescott, the board chairman, his expression grim beneath his silver hair. That's our CEO. The audio feed kicked in just as Jessica Keller was saying these cashing places are really better equipped for your needs. Her voice dripping with condescension filled the boardroom. This wasn't just bad customer service. This wasn't just rudeness. This was the systematic discrimination they had all convinced themselves didn't exist in their institution. This is happening in our flagship branch, whispered Catherine Reynolds, the third board member present. She didn't need to finish the question. The implication hung in the air. How many other customers faced this treatment daily? How many had simply walked away, taking their business elsewhere, never filing complaints, never escalating to man? Get me everything we have on Jessica Keller, Diane barked at her assistant, while gathering her tablet and security badge employment history performance. Reviews, customer complaints, everything, and call legal. Tell them to meet me downstairs in 15 minutes. As she rushed toward the elevator, Diane scrolled through her tablet, pulling up branch analytics, the downtown branches. Performance metrics filled the screen, impressive at first glance, top-tier new account generation, strong loan origination numbers, excellent deposit growth. But when she applied filters to disaggregate the data by customer demographics, the true picture emerged. The patterns were undeniable, hidden in plain sight within their own data. Jessica's branch had the highest account rejection rate for minority applicants, the lowest rate of loan approvals for black business owners, and a customer attrition rate among people of color that was triple the bank's average. How had they missed this, or had they simply chosen not to see? Back in the branch lobby, tensions were escalating. By the second Jessica had summoned the security guard, a young man named Thomas, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the situation. Barely 25, new to the job and clearly unprepared, prepped for the moral complexity of what he was being asked to do. I need this woman escorted from the premises, Jessica instructed, not looking at Angela as if she were an object rather than a person. Her voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had never had her authority questioned within these walls. She's creating a disturbance and refusing to leave after being denied service. The security guard hesitated, clearly sensing something wasn't right about the situation. His gaze flickered between Jessica, his technical superior, and Angela, whose composure stood in stark contrast to the manager's growing agitation. Sir, Angela said calmly to the guard, I have every right to be here. I'm a customer of this bank attempting to access my own funds. I have provided all required identification and have broken no rules or laws. Thomas, the security guard, shifted his weight from one foot to another, clearly conflicted. His training had covered robbery protocols and emergency procedures, but nothing had prepared him for this moral gray area. Ma'am, Jessica's face flushed with anger at the guard's hesitation and at being contradicted in front of her staff. This is a private business, and we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who may be attempting to commit fraud. The ascus hung in the air. Fraud. Without evidence, without foundation, Jessica had leveled one of the most serious allegations possible in a banking environment, and yet to those watching, the true fraud was becoming increasingly apparent. The fraud of equal service, of meritocracy, of fairness. The staff had formed a literal wall behind Jessica. Mark, standing with arms crossed, his security badge twisted backward so his name wasn't visible. Richard, with a satisfied smirk, twirling a pen between his fingers in a gesture of casual contempt, and even Beth, who had seemed uncomfortable earlier, now standing in solidarity with her colleagues, though her eyes remained fixed on the floor. The message was clear. It was all of them against Angela, a unified front of institutional power aligned against a single customer whose only crime was expecting to be treated with basic dignity. Other customers in the branch had taken notice of the confrontation. Some pretended to focus on their own transactions, eyes darting occasionally toward the scene. Others watched openly, their expressions ranging from discomfort to plant interest in the unfolding drama. A middle-aged white man who had been waiting in line stepped forward, inserting himself into the situation with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his right to occupy any space. Listen, lady, some of us have real banking to do today, he said, gesturing impatiently. If you're not going to leave, at least stop causing trouble for everybody else. The irony was painful. Angela thought of the countless meetings where she had emphasized customer experience as the cornerstone of their business model, the training programs she had championed, the inclusion initiatives she had funded, all seemingly worthless in the face of deeply ingrained biases that no corporate memo could eradicate. Rather than argue, Angela quietly raised her phone and continued documenting the Escalating situation, she recorded the staff's expressions, the security guards. Discomfort, the customer's intervention, all of it preserved with crystal clarity. Each second of footage was another nail in the coffin of careers built on discrimination. Jessica noticed the recording, and her expression darkened further. The vein in her temple throbbed visibly as she struggled to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping through her fingers. Photography is not permitted in the bank. This is another violation of our policies, actually, Angela replied her voice steady according to Meridian Finance's own customer service policy section. 4. 3 customers have the right to document any interaction where they feel their rights are being violated. The specificity of her knowledge caught Jessica off guard, but only momentarily. Behind her eyes, questions were beginning to form. Who was this woman? Really, how did she know company policies in such detail? How did she have Diane Porter's direct number, but rather than consider these questions rather then pause to reassess the situation? Jessica's face twisted into an ugly sneer as she turned to the staff and, "Security guard, this is exactly what I'm talking about," she said loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. These people are always trying to game the system. They come in here thinking they know the rules better than we do, looking for any loophole to exploit. The mask had dropped completely. Now no more pretense of security concerns or banking protocols, just naked prejudice on full display, captured forever on the bank's own security system. And Angela phone customers were either watching in morbid fascination or pointedly looking away, pretending not to notice the spectacle unfolding before them. Even a few of the staff members were beginning to shift uncomfortably as Jessica's behavior grew increasingly erratic, the veneer of professionalism cracking to reveal the prejudice beneath. Richard, whose mockery had been so open earlier, now darted uncertain glances at his manager. This was going further than he had expected, crossing lines that even he recognized shouldn't be crossed in a professional environment. Beth, the teller who had first assisted Angela, looked physically ill, her complexion ashen as she witnessed the escalation of what had begun as a routine transaction. She had followed procedure, called her manager as required for large withdrawals, but this public humiliation of a customer wasn't what she had signed up for. Only Mark remained steadfast in his support of Jessica, his crossed arms and rigid stance a physical manifestation of the institutional barriers Angela had faced throughout her career. Through it all, Angela Freeman stood perfectly still at the center of this storm, her dignity intact, waiting the weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for every customer who had ever been dismissed, disrespected, or denied service based on their appearance, rested on her shoulders. The elevator chime sounded faintly in the distance. Jessica's head turned slightly at the sound, momentarily distracted. Something in the air had changed, like the pressure drop before a storm. The grand double doors of Meridian Financial's flagship branch burst open with such force that they slammed against the walls, the sound reverberating through the marble lobby like a thunderclap. Every head turned as Diane Porter strode into the space, her presence commanding immediate attention. The head of operations, second in command of the entire corporation, moved with the focused intensity of someone about to extinguish or fire stop. This immediately, her voice carried the weight of absolute